Okay, so I want to address myself to something Mark Murphy said in his reply to Wes Morriston about the incompleteness of the reasons that God gives for his commands, because this is a question that came up in connection with something I'd said in my paper, and I have a footnote about this. Of course, I didn't read any footnotes. But it does seem to me that there's a problem about God's giving incomplete explanations of his commands, because I take the point, of course it's true, that we don't always fully explain what the reasons for our commands and permissions are to other people. But there is a danger in that, and that is that people are apt to take those reasons, the reasons that we do give, as justifying future actions in future cases, so if I tell a student that comes to me and said, I've got a learning disability, I need extra time on the examination, and I say yes, that's okay, I think I'm committed to regarding that as a sufficient reason, unless there's some circumstance not yet mentioned, to take that as a sufficient reason for giving permission in the future, or to give it the same permission to another student who has the same excuse, unless there's some overriding consideration. So the reasons that are given for actions, commands or permissions, seems to me have a certain precedential import, which I don't think you're, yeah. Furthermore, it seems to me that this is not a trivial point, because some of these commands some of these biblical narratives have been taken as having
no, don't take it away from, please. Just one thing. So, why do you think that so if someone comes with a request or something, and you make an authorization and you give a reason, what's the basis for thinking that similar cases in the future would have to be governed by that reason, right? That statement of the reason, be it an incomplete one?
When I give my reasons to my students for the permissions I give, I don't give the complete story about how the circumstances would have to be in order for me to make the allowance in the future.
So I don't know if this is going to fully address the question. So one thing you could say about this is that the kinds of cases in which we we might think, well, even if we gave a kind of incomplete reason, right? We might have a worry with respect to that. If we thought that the incomplete reason was, say, in some way misleading or something like that, you can say part of the sort of immediate reason that leaps to mind is that there are often cases in which people have reliance interests, right? They're trying to guide, trying to sort of, they're trying to build their lives around the kind of expectations they're going to be held to, right? Now, so look, is there any reason to think, right? Is there any reason to think that those, with respect to God entering sort of, in special ways into their history to give commands that are sort of outside of the order of moral norms, have a reliance interest, right, on God's giving commands in all such cases in which that people would judge in the future, right? So they think, there's another tribe that also experiences some wickedness, and that's the reason that God gave, right? Thus, we should be able to rely on the fact that we're going to be allowed to exterminate them or whatever, right? Well, it doesn't seem to me to be analogous in the case that you have. It seems like the differences between the kind of procedural reasons that we have for relying on for sticking with our incomplete statements of reasons just don't carry over very well when we're thinking about God as the commander.
Paul Weithman here.
Thank you. I'd love to know what it is about our nature that binds us to one another, just as such, but I'm not going to squander my question by inquiring about it. Instead, I want to ask about the common source argument. Yeah. And I take it the argument goes something like this. To be subject to justice is to be subject to norms that are experienced as constraining and that constrain the set of actions that I can choose, in some sense of can that we want to look into. Yeah. And God can't be subject to norms that are experienced as constraining or that constrain the set of actions he can choose in that sense
constraining, right?
of can. And so God can't be subject to justice. Now,
Yeah.
one question about the argument is what exactly it has to do with the common source. And I think you need to say a bit more about constraints than you have to spell that out. But leave that aside. I mean, I must say I do pretty well, I'd like to think, conforming with the laws of logic, but I sometimes find them constraining. There are times when I'd love to affirm a consequent. When I tried to balance my checkbook the other night, and I found arithmetic very constraining. I mean, presumably God doesn't find logic or arithmetic constraining, but you don't want to say God isn't subject to the rules of logic or arithmetic, do you? But parity of reasoning would suggest you have to say that.
Yeah, you know, so I'm tempted to these views on which, you know, look, God's the truth maker for all states of affairs that obtain, including those. I mean, not that God has any sort of choice with respect to them, right? Not that God could have chosen otherwise or made them differently, right? But that somehow God's the truth maker for those. Now, I don't know if that. You know, so I'm a poor moral philosopher, right? You know, this is the exalted fields of the metaphysicians that I'm playing in. So I looked at them for help and sort of in thinking through those sorts of views. But one thing I'd like to, one thing you could push on there, right? So even if you didn't want to take that sort of strong view, right? You could toy with the idea that look, there does seem to be an essential difference to the ways that the laws of nature. The laws of logic are constraining in the way that justice norms are constraining, right? So justice norms, again, sort of have a substantive character to them. The laws of logic don't. You guys say they don't seem to have. They don't seem to be. Put it with they're not self. They don't have their. It's not obvious that they have their truths. How should I put this? So. You could say that with respect to justice norms that they're not the kinds of things that are sort of self-explanatory, right? That they require some sort of account, right, in the ways that the laws of logic don't seem to be, right? So you might think there's some substantive difference between laws of logic and in a decayological order that would explain why it would be unseemly for God to be subject, right, to norms of justice in a way that the kind of subject to laws of logic just seems much more seems trivial by contrast.
The gentleman next to Professor Weissman.
Hi. I'm not sure I really understand this decayological order business, so I just want to ask you about two cases that I have pretty firm intuitions about, and I just want to know how they come out. So one case is the case of animals that came up earlier. I think animals can be wronged if we, you know, slice them and dice them for our fun. You know. I think that's wrong. But then let's take another case. Have you seen the movie District 9?
No.
Has anyone here seen the movie District 9? Yeah, good. Okay, in that, but do you know anything about it? Now, so, quick synopsis. Aliens come from another planet, and it's what we do to them rather than what they do to us. It's interestingly placed in South Africa, and they are corralled into concentration camps and all kinds of unjust behavior toward them. I take it, I would just wonder whether that could count as just. On your account of justice.
Yeah. So these are great. I mean, I don't think animals can be wronged. Okay. I think that one can act wrongly with respect to animals in lots and lots of different ways. Right. I think that almost everything one would want to say about the wrongful treatment of animals can be said using the language of acting wrongly with respect to, without talking about the language of, you know, being wronged. Okay. So that's my view. That's my view on that. Now, I think the question of you know, the extraterrestrial, right? I think is a great question. I mean, it's something that Thompson. So Thompson is the person that Michael Thompson is the person whose views I'm sort of trying to think through here, right? And Thompson himself has the view that this is sort of the bullet biting moment, right? Where on his view, he's a strong Aristotelian. On his view, they don't share a common nature, right, with us, right? And as a result, they can't wrong us, we can't wrong them, right? Again, though it's possible that we could act wrongly with respect to them in some way by not properly appreciating their value, they don't properly appreciate our value, and so forth. Now, it's interesting, I think it's important, right, that Thompson doesn't have an out here that I have, right, which is that I'm a theist, right? On Thompson's view, it's not plausible, right, that different species of created rational beings, right, might nevertheless share, in some relevant sense, a common nature that could put them under a common form of justice, right? On my view, it's possible. You know, I don't know what to think. I don't know what to think about how the natures of some other created rational beings originating in some other place in the universe might nevertheless share our nature and so be under our common order. But again, I think that's a possibility, right? That's available to me in my view. That's not available to something like Thompson's. Now, I also don't think though that holding a view like that commits me to any. I'm always straying from the microphone. I'm sorry. I got to hold the microphone. Sorry. That it commits me to any view of the sort that I don't think that commits me to the view that any two the view that any two rational beings are going to be in a decheological order together. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true. I think that God, the difference in the kind of rational being that God is from us, is so vast that it seems implausible that we are in fact part of a common order.
Right. Coming over here, just so people know who I do have in the queue, here, Professor Crisp, Professor Fales, Professor Van den Wagen, Professor Planiga, and Professor Anthony so far.